I want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Rome Pre-Owned Sales, located at 949 Floyd Avenue in Rome. If you're in the market for a quality pre-owned vehicle and great customer service, make sure you check them out. A special thank you to General Manager Anthony Mariani for his support of the Rockpile Sports Network and local sports here in the Mohawk Valley. Your sponsorship truly helps us continue to highlight our athletes, coaches, and teams. If you or your business are interested in sponsoring the Rockpile Sports Network, feel free to reach out to me directly at coachkorg23@gmail.com. Let's welcome everybody to the Mohawk Valley Sportswatch here on Sunday morning. Good morning, Mohawk Valley. Welcome to another edition here of the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch. I'm your host, as always, the coach, Rocky Corigliano, and I appreciate you starting your Sunday morning off with me. Coming up this morning, we got a great lineup. We're going to be diving into the biggest story across Syracuse, New York, probably across all of upstate New York, the firing this past week of head coach Red Autry. We'll talk to Rome Sports Hall of Famer, longtime journalist, friend of the show, Scott Pitoniak is going to join me here in just a little bit. We'll talk about that and who he thinks should be the next head coach at Syracuse. And following Scott at the bottom of the hour, we'll talk to Rome Free Academy basketball standout Syracuse Norris. Syracuse was recently named the Tri-Valley League Player of the Year. We'll talk to him about his incredible career with the Black Knights, what this means to him, and what the next steps are in his basketball journey here this morning, right here on the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch. We did have some basketball scores yesterday. I was at OCC for the girls' Notre Dame game, and some of the girls were yesterday. The boys will play today. Some of the scores from yesterday, a little lopsided, except the West Canada game was a really good game. Marcellus was the game before I got there, before Notre Dame played at 1. Marcellus won 88-31. And then the Notre Dame game, Ella Trinkus broke her cousin Emily Durr's scoring record. She's the all-time scoring leader at Notre Dame history. Notre Dame, the girls won 79-21. That game was really never close. And then Delaware Academy beat West Canada Valley. That was the game after Notre Dame yesterday, 58-48. So the West Canada girls season comes to an end, but a great season for West Canada is they 23-2. On the boys' side, the boys will play today. But we did have some games this week. Amsterdam beat Nottingham 61-55, and CBA Albany beat Bishop Ludden-Grimes 80-51. Some of the local games today, Marcellus on the boys' side will play Potsdam. That game's at 11 o'clock. The 1 o'clock game will be West Hill against Malone. West Hill takes that 23-0 record on the line today against Malone. At 3 o'clock, it'll be Sackett's Harbor and Edmonston. And then at 5 o'clock, again, Cooperstown takes that undefeated record. They will play Elmira Notre Dame at 5. And then I think, unless this is wrong, I think this might be the night game. I have East Syracuse Noah and Seton Catholic is the 7 o'clock game today. So a full slate of games on the boys' side at OCC today. Some college scores from last night. Today will be Selection Sunday. So if you're a hoop lover like I am, I think that's at 6 o'clock today. There's still some conference championship games to be played, but we will know the field tonight. I believe it's at 6. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to look, but it is later on today. The ACC championship, Duke beat Virginia 74-70. I think it's a really good Virginia team that can make some noise in the tournament as well. Arizona pretty much locked up. I think win or lose, they had locked up a 1 seed anyways. They beat 79-74. Michigan, another one of those teams I think locked in a 1 seed for sure. They beat Wisconsin, who, if you get in the dance, you don't want to see Wisconsin's name on your line and play them. They are as hot as anybody in the country, and that was a really good game yesterday. Michigan beat them 68-65. Vanderbilt hammered Florida. Really surprised at this one. I did not see this one coming. This tournament was in Nashville. This was a home game for the Commodores. They won 91-74. Does anybody own New York City better than Rick Pitino? Can we give Rick Pitino some credit? Whether you like Coach Pitino or not, the job he's done at St. John's, back-to-back Big East champs. They beat UConn 72-52. I think St. Johnny's is probably in that 3 or 4 seed line. They're another team right now. I think John Fanta said it last night. They've won like 10 out of the last 11 or 11 out of the last 12, something crazy like that. They're going to be a really tough out for anybody. The physicality that they play with, and they are well coached. Arkansas, credit Chris Beard and Ole Miss for the run they had through the SEC tournament. It wasn't a great season for Ole Miss. They finished 15-20, only 4-14, but they had a chance. This thing went to overtime. So Coach Cal will play for the SEC finals today. They win 93-90. UCLA was another one of those hot teams as well. Nick Cronin's team playing really well down the stretch without their 2 best players. They have to be thinking hopefully they get games on Friday, Sunday to give those 2 stars a rest to get them back. Because if they can come back and they're healthy, I think UCLA is another one of those teams you do not want to see on your line. But they fall yesterday, Purdue 73-66. Yale wins the first semifinal of the Ivy League. They're the favorites to win this thing today. Really good team. They're really deep. They can win a couple games as well. I think they can survive the first weekend. They beat Cornell 88-76. UMBC beats Vermont. Many remember the run UMBC had as the 16th seed and knocked off the 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Well, they won. They will be in the big dance again. They beat Vermont 74-59. The MEAC final, Howard, they beat North Carolina Central 70-63. A wild finish if you didn't see the A-10 between Dayton and St. Louis. Dayton wins 70-69. Little controversy at the end, chaotic ending. You see a Dayton player come off the bench and start celebrating with time left in the game. An assistant coach left the bench as well to pull the kid back. Should have been a technical foul. St. Louis should have got 2 free throws, and you never know. Maybe St. Louis makes them both and they win, but they don't call it, and Dayton punches their ticket. So I believe, and many believe, the A-10 is going to get at least 2 teams, maybe 3. We'll see. St. Louis should get in. Dayton obviously is the automatic qualifier, and then we'll have to see if VCU punches their ticket as well. Penn's the other team out of the Ivy League. They beat a really young Harvard team. Credit Tommy Amaker's team. If he that team intact for next year, Harvard is going to be a team come March next year you do not want to see. Penn wins 62-60. They will play for the Ivy League championship today. South Florida, many think the coach will be the new head coach at Syracuse. We will see South Florida beat Charlotte 86-64. So South Florida will play today for the American Conference Championship as they move to 24-8. VCU will play the finals today. As I was just saying, VCU is one of those bubble teams, but St. Joe's, they beat St. Joe's 77-64. The Shockers of Wichita State, they are back. Excuse me, that was the semifinals. I thought that was the finals for them. I thought they played theirs today or yesterday, but they beat Tulsa 81-68. The Mountain West Championship, Utah State beat San Diego State. Prairie View A&M beat Southern. That was the SWAC. Akron will punch their ticket as they beat 79-76. Kennesaw State beat Louisiana Tech in the Conference USA 71-60. In the 2 late games last night, Hawaii punches their ticket. They beat UC Irvine 71-64. And Cal Baptist beat Utah Valley in the WAC final. So a full slate of games yesterday. There'll be a full slate of conference championship games today. And some of those games that will be played today, you got the Ivy League Championship 12. That's Penn and Yale. You got the SEC Championship, which Vandy and Arkansas. Vandy's playing really well. A-10, you got VCU Dayton. You got South Florida and Wichita State in the American. And then rounding it out at 3:30, Michigan and Purdue, which that will be a battle for sure in that game. So in just a few seconds, we're going to bring on Scott. We'll talk about Syracuse. We'll see what happens for that matchup. So let's see if we can get Scott on now. Scott looks like he's in the process of hooking up his stuff. I'm just looking now. Scott, if you can hear me, it's saying your mic's not detected, so we'll hang tight for that. But we'll be talking to Scott Pitoniak here in just a moment. We're going to get Scott's take on who he thinks the next coach at Syracuse should be. A lot of hype going on right now about the coach from South Florida. That's the rumblings that I keep hearing from Syracuse fans. If you get on Twitter, that's all I hear from Twitter as well, is they think that he's going to be the next head coach. Well, we'll have to see what all the hype is about that, and who Scott believes should be the next head coach. Many Syracuse fans think Jerry McNamara should get a look. So we'll see if GMAC gets a look, or if GMAC. There's other jobs out there. Many are saying that the Providence job is an attractive job, and many have mentioned GMAC's name for that job as well. So we'll have to see where they go. Do you want to keep it in-house in the family with Syracuse, or you want to go outside the coaching tree? I say you have to open it up. I think it's good to go outside the coaching tree, but that's just me. I think it hurt GMAC this year with the firing of Coach Autry, and that's not saying anything. I like Red Autry, and maybe he'll get another chance down the road somewhere. I think he should at some point in time, but as Coach Boeheim said earlier in the week too, his two best players didn't play that well for Syracuse this year, so I'm not 100% sure. Um, why make those comments? And many think that Coach Boeheim should kind of be out of the picture too. I don't think necessarily that's true. I don't think you throw Jim Boeheim, whose name's on the court, out. Do I think they should go to Coach Boeheim and talk and see what he thinks? I don't think so. It's a new AD with no Syracuse ties coming in, and Brian Blair, who's coming in from Toledo. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think it's pretty much a done deal. I think there's been a lot of different articles that I've read. Um, let me see what he's saying. Let me pull his out. He said, I've seen several Syracuse articles regarding Kyle Smith from Stanford. That's an interesting one. I have not heard that one at all. I don't know too much about, I think it's I think it's, I'm thinking of Mark Madsen from Stanford, but I have not heard that name. That's a really interesting name. A couple names I have heard for that job that I think would be interesting. One of them's Bobby Hurley, who just got fired from Arizona State. I think that's a really interesting hire, or at least somebody to think about, because I think he did okay there at Arizona State. I don't think he had a lot of NIL money. And here's the one thing I'm going to say, and I'll ask Scott this same question. What I don't like about this NIL thing is it seems like you fire a coach, and then all of a sudden the school comes on, the athletic director and the administration come on and say, well, we're going to invest more money in the program. Well, why the hell didn't you invest more money in the program when the prior coach was there, or before he got fired? Like, why do that? That's the part that I really didn't understand when I hear athletic directors say that. But I heard Bobby Hurley's name get mentioned, and then the other name that I heard get mentioned, which I think would be a really interesting hire, is Holloway from Seton Hall. I think that would be a really intriguing hire, or at least a thought for Syracuse. And I know everybody's saying Brian Hodgson, the coach from South Florida. Um, I don't know too much about him. I know he spent some time as an assistant coach at Alabama. He was Nate Oates' top recruiter. I get all that. And then he was the Arkansas State men's basketball coach before taking over at UCF. So, he's won everywhere he's been. A lot of people say they like his style of offense. It would work well at Syracuse. So we'll see. Again, I don't know much about him. So I know he's won everywhere he's went, and he's a different name outside of the Syracuse tree. So somebody to think about. Let me see if I can get Scott for some reason. Let's see, Scott. I'm trying. I don't know what's going on here, but let me see if I can. It's looking like it's saying I can't pull Scott in. Scott, if you could hear me, it's saying your device is not detected. So I'm not sure. Um, I can try it again here in just a second, see if we can pull you over. And the other name that's an interesting name too is, Mike Hopkins, again, former Syracuse guy that spent some time over at Washington, had left Syracuse back in 2017. Many thought that he was the coach in waiting. And then Boeheim decided to stay. Mike Hopkins went out on his own. Had a couple good years at Washington, and then things didn't go his way. He was let go at Washington, and then currently he's an assistant coach for the Pelicans. So some NBA guys. I said this a long time ago, and I always bring this up, and I always say, God rest his soul, Lawrence Moulton, because years ago I had interviewed Lawrence Moulton on this show, and I had asked Lawrence Moulton when the time comes, um, who do you think would be the next head coach at Syracuse? And without a doubt, he said, my man Mike Hopkins comes back to Syracuse. Now, again, that was before, um, Coach Hopkins got fired at Washington. He had a couple really good years, I think, where he won 20 games, and then things kind of went south. Again, not a lot of NIL, not a lot of experience in the NIL. So we'll see what direction Syracuse goes. If you get on Twitter, and I know Twitter, there's so many different fake Twitter handles on there. Everywhere I turn, I keep seeing it. This Brian Hodson's deal is basically a done deal, and he's got a chance. Choices to pick between Providence and Syracuse. I'm not sure how true that is. As South Florida's, hopefully they win today. They punched their ticket to March Madness. Tobin Anderson, who's an upstate New York guy, if you remember, Tobin Anderson, the 16th seeded head coach for Fairleigh Dickinson. He just got the head job at Tennessee Tech. He's on that staff as well. And Tobin's an upstate New York guy here locally. Great coach. Happy to see him get another shot. And the other name that I hear, obviously Jerry McNamara's name keeps getting thrown out there. Obviously the job that he's done in a short time, taking a Siena team that won 4 games to winning over 20 games and winning the MAC conference this year and punching their ticket to March Madness. Many think that he should get a look. I think he should get a look. Whether or not he wants that job, that's another question. If I'm GMAC, though, do you want to go there? Do you want to go back to your alma mater? And I know a lot of local fans here around this area say, bring him home. Bring him home. I thought GMAC should have got the job before Red Autry got that job. And I think that GMAC went out and said, I got to go out on my own and I got to go make a name for myself. And a lot of people will say, well, it's a mid-major. Well, South Florida's a mid-major, too. Nobody's saying anything about Brian Hodgson, the coach there. They're like begging for this guy to be the head coach. And I'm really not sure what everybody sees is so spectacular about him. I know he's won everywhere he's been, but I'm not sure all the hype. If South Florida wasn't winning, would people in this area even know who this guy is? I guess that's the question I'm throwing out there. So if anybody's listening to me this morning, did anybody even know who this guy was at South Florida before the run that South Florida's made? And now you hear all the names of these coaches. And I'm going to give credit to some of the athletic directors that are out there, because I saw some of these ADs like Thad Matta at Butler being retained probably because they can't afford the buyouts at schools with these monies to buy him out and then hire a new head coach. But that's okay. I can live with that. But they're keeping these coaches. Thad Matta's a really good basketball coach. Butler has no NIL at all. And I just saw the coach, I think it was the coach from Loyola Chicago, who's a former Michigan State guard. They're going to retain him after they went like 8-26. Valentine, that's who it was. I think it was Drew Valentine. They went 8-26, and they're going to keep him. And he's got one of the best recruiting classes. Scott says it's now allowing me camera and video access. All right, Scott, let me see if I can resend you. Let me just send Scott a message. I'm going to try to resend him. All right, let's see. We'll get Scott on. We got to make time for Scott this morning. It's been a while since I've touched base with Scott, but anytime I need somebody to talk Syracuse football, Syracuse basketball, Scott is my first phone call to make. So let's see. Scott, I'm going to try it again. Let's see. We're going to get Scott on. We can't not have him on here this morning. Let's see. All right. Scott says he can hear me. All right. Just send it to you again, Scott. Hopefully we can make this thing happen. But again, going back to the coach thing, I see a lot of these coaches were retained. Um, and again, I think it's a good thing, but I think it's the world of NIL where these athletic directors in schools don't want to pay the buyout and then hire another coach. And I think the other coach that I saw that they retained too, and I think he's a fantastic coach. I think Porter Moser, the coach down at Oklahoma, I think he's a fantastic coach. Oklahoma was competitive down the stretch, made a little bit of a run in the SEC tournament. Since coming over to the SEC, I don't think they've been extremely competitive as they have been when they were in the Big 12. But again, I like that fact that they're keeping some of these coaches and giving them another opportunity to see what they can do. Again, probably because of the NIL, I get it, but I like it. But some of these schools, like you said, we saw in football, right? They buy out these coaches where the buyouts are so high, they end up spending like 40, $50 million. I think that's what happened with Brian Kelly and then hiring Lane Kiffin. And then Lane Kiffin went out and spent, I think, like $30 million on a roster. But those schools have it. Those schools have the money, and it's okay. Penn State did it, right? When they hired Matt Campbell, they just did it with Moore in Michigan, hiring Kyle Whittingham. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure why, Scott. I'm not sure why it's saying that. I've never had any issues bringing you on. Let me try one other. Let me try one other thing here. Let's see if it's on my end. Let me just try to send this one more time. I'll try doing this a different way. All right, let's see. Let's see if this works. Scott, I don't know if you're trying to use, if it matters what browser. If you're using Chrome, I think Chrome is okay. I'm not sure if Firefox or some of the other ones. I'm not sure which one you're using, but I think Chrome usually is the main one. But I've never had any issues trying to get Scott on, so we'll have to see. Hopefully, we get him on. I know at the bottom of the hour here, I'll have Sarafia he'll be joining me at about 9:30. So if we get Sarafia on, we get done with Sarafia and we can get Scott back up and running. We'll get Scott on because I want to get his thoughts on the Syracuse move. But what's your guys' thoughts on this? Who do you guys want to see as the next Syracuse coach? Is it Jerry McNamara? Is there somebody out there that nobody's talking about that you'd like to see? I keep hearing that, if you're Syracuse, you can reach out and aim big. Maybe you go give Bruce Pearl a call. Maybe call Rick Pitino. Maybe you call some of those big name guys. I always say this. I feel like we replenish coaches. We see the same names like in college. I see the same names. And now we saw like at Ohio State, I saw Matt Patricia just signed for like $3.5 million to be, I think, the highest paid assistant coach in college football. And if you think about this, you think Matt Patricia, who was an NFL guy, came to college and is going to make $3.5 million a year as a coordinator. Does that bring more people from the pro game to college? Could we see more pro basketball coaches coming to college? I don't know if we'll see that, but could we see some assistant coaches come into college? And some of these schools have a lot of money. The college game now in football is it's basically the NFL, right? I mean, college basketball is too, but I think football is a lot more like the NFL. Even basketball. I know they have general managers with the NIL, and they're basically building teams that way. And they're basically bringing people in to build these teams, saying, "Here's your pool of money. Build me a team." Well, that's the NFL. That's the NBA. So, is there any chance that we can see some of those guys? Is there an NBA guy that might come back and coach college? Yeah, I'm not sure. Scott's saying it's blocking his browser. I'm not sure why that's doing that. Scott, we'll have to see if you can hear me still. We'll have to see if maybe we can record you during the week Because like I said, I really want to get Scott on and get his thoughts on this Syracuse piece. And it's always great to catch up with Scott too. I haven't caught up with him since early in the football season. So Scott, I'll reach out to you after this and see if we can record something during the week. We'll try something different and see if we can make it happen. So the other name I had heard earlier in the week, and again, it's not going to happen because I heard he signed the extension with St. Louis, is Josh Schertz. He was the other flashy name that I heard, the St. Louis coach. He was at Division II Lincoln Memorial for 13 years. He's won close to 80% of his games as an NCAA coach. And he's got St. Louis, who lost Baker yesterday, which again, the controversial ending, if you saw it, what happened. But he just signed an extension. And I'll say this, and I thought it was a lot like college football, when you had all these big name coaches that turned down these jobs and got extensions. Like I said, and Kurt Cignetti is probably the difference. Is Cignetti got that big deal in Indiana. But I said, when is the last time that we would see or we'd ever heard of the coach at Indiana potentially turning down the head job at Michigan, Penn State, LSU, like all these big name schools, Auburn, right? Auburn hired a new coach, Florida hires a new coach, and a guy decided to stay at Indiana. And I think you're going to see more. So this guy at Lewis, was he ever a candidate for the Syracuse job, the Providence job? I don't know. We'll never really know. Some people say, yep, he was an option, but he decided to stay at St. Louis versus potentially coming and coaching in the ACC at Syracuse. When would you ever see a St. Louis coach staying put and turning down those other schools? I think the other thing is, and I always use this as an example, I always use my former coach, Dave Clawson, and Coach Medicis and Pags always have heard me say this for years. And I think it's a really good example. When Coach Clawson came to Wake Forest, and Wake Forest was winning games, they were going to bowl games every year. Every coaching job in America that came up, they'd say, well, Dave Clawson's in the running for this. Dave Clawson would be a good fit. I have no knowledge, no expertise to know if Coach Clawson ever applied and interviewed for any of those other jobs. I do know that if you go to a school where you're comfortable, where you're winning games, it's the right fit, you're getting paid millions. Now, you're not getting paid maybe $12 million that Florida or Michigan can pay you. Maybe you're making 5 or 6. And a lot of these coaches now at these smaller schools are making more money than they ever have. Hire me and then fire me in 2 years, pay my buyout. I'm good. But I think it's all about how comfortable you are. How comfortable are you with the university? How comfortable is your family, with you? If you have kids, like, you have to take all that into consideration. I think we're seeing more of these guys that are comfortable where they're at. They don't want to take the chance to where if you go to Florida, like John Summerall, the coach that went to Florida, I think he was the Tulane guy. Like, if he has 2 down years, he's in trouble. So you take that chance. But the other flip side to it, I'll say, is this. Go bet on yourself. Some of these coaches have done it, and it's worked out, and some of these coaches haven't done it. They get fired, but then, they get fired, and they still get paid their money that's owed to them. But a lot of these coaches will take a chance on themselves and say, I want a shot to go coach against the best. I want a shot to go coach in the Big Ten. I want a shot to go coach in the SEC. I want to go coach in the ACC in basketball. Bigger pool of money in those conferences. The Big Ten and the SEC in football are kings. The Big Ten right now owns the SEC. 3 years in a row, they've won a national championship. So I get all that. But at the end of the day, if you stay at a school like a St. Louis, and I'm using him for example because I know he signed the extension. You stay at St. Louis. The A10 is not the greatest conference. For the most part, there may be a 1 or 2 bid league every year. If you're competing, you're winning 20 games a year, you're competing to win the A10 and go to the NCAA tournament. At a school like St. Louis, does St. Louis have any expectations to go to a Final Four? I don't think so. I don't think it's realistic that happens. So I think these schools, like, if you're content, St. Louis has no shot. No shot to get, I would say, to get to a Final Four. They get in the NCAA tournament. Maybe they play well. You never know what bracket you're going to get put in, what seed you're going to bet, who gets upset. Like, I get it. I'm all about it. But he's happy where he's at. So what? Let him stay there. He's probably making $2.5, $3 million a year. But listen, I got Sarafia coming on. He doesn't want to hear me babble about St. Louis and the coach. Maybe he would get his thoughts on who he thinks should be the next head coach at Syracuse. So we're gonna welcome him on here. Let me just scroll my sheet down here because I'm a little off script today, but that's okay. It's fun to go off script here. So let's bring Sarafia on with me now. What's going on, my friend? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I can hear you.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking time this morning and jumping on with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, listen, you're welcome. Let's start off first. I want you to kind of take us down memory lane a little bit if you can. And first off, congratulations on a great career here at RFA. When you look back at your time at RFA, you played varsity since what you were an eighth grader. So you
Yeah.
spent a lot of time on the varsity program, but even in the program in general, what stands out to you the most?
Honestly, can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
All right, yeah. Just how everybody, improved and got better, throughout the years. You look and we've lost many guys, my first year and then new guys coming in and improving. And you'll see we went, I think, point 500 that ninth grade year. But we came back with the same team and everybody's improved, and then we went from 17-5, then the junior year 17-0, and then just this recent year.
So one of the things I was going back and I was looking at your time and I sent Coach Medicis a number. You finished your career at you guys were 69-35 overall. You were 22-9 in the Tri Valley League. What's been the best part of the successful run for this program?
Honestly, just having it with the teammates, I'm had making new friends through this, and being with them every day. It's also fun, winning with your friends, your teammates. It's good.
And I think and you probably correct me on this stat line, but I had you just at about 19.9 or 19.8 points a game. So I'm going to round you up. I gave you 20 points per game this season, but you were named the Tri Valley League Player of the Year. What'd that mean to you personally?
I mean a lot. Kind of before the season, it's just putting in the work. So it's things that should come. Obviously, I'm glad that happened. So I'm thankful for it.
And you led the team not only in just scoring, but you led your team in so many different ways, assists, steals, free throws. How important was that to you to impact the game in so many ways? Because I remember sitting and watching you play when I'm up in the stand saying, Coach, if I'm you, just find a way to get him the ball and just say, take this game over. How important was it to you to lead in so many different ways?
Well, obviously, scoring is one thing, but kind of when you're not scoring, it's kind of like how can I impact the game in other ways? So, doing all the little things and trying to do any way I can, to help the teammates and the team. So just trying to help out.
So this year's team, Sarafa, you guys finished 15-7, make another deep run. You guys get to the semifinals against Bishop Ledden, who, you guys had them at home earlier in the season, which I think you guys only lost by 3 points in that game.
Yeah,
What'd you learn from this year's team in the season after that game?
that things are gonna happen. Coming with a whole new team, basically. A lot of young guys that came up from JV, and just kind of building their confidence. I feel like everybody fought. Did what they did. This year was a lot of learning for everybody. Bringing in a new team like that. It's different chemistry. Got to learn how everybody plays. So everybody fought. We did, but obviously, you know,
So it's nice to see it as a former alumni here when I played. We weren't very good in basketball.
yeah,
Um, I think I want to say my senior year, we might have been 1-19 or like 2-18, and we were down a little bit. But and you look throughout your career here and the good years that you guys have had, this program seems to be heading in the right direction. What do you think's helped build that winning culture at RFA?
honestly, just the connection everybody has. I feel like everybody's so together. Past couple of years, I was so close to everybody, and just being so together and connected with everybody. I feel like that helps really a lot.
And not only were you a 1,000 point scorer, but last year you got a chance to play with 2,000 point scorers in Isaiah and DeAndre. What was it like sharing the court with those two guys? With three of you guys on the floor, man, that was a deadly combination. But what was it like playing with those two?
I mean, it was fun, you know. Any game, it's like who's gonna score. You know, it could be any of us. And then even when you're on the court, it's kind of like you know where the guys like where they want to be, where they want to shoot from, like where their hot spots are and where they aren't. You know, so it's kind of like you're playing, and you know where they're gonna be at, ready to shoot. So it was fun, and I'm glad I got to do it with them. Really long time friends with them since like third grade. Playing AAU and then up to the high school level. So just being with them, it was so much fun.
Yeah, and you guys are so fun to watch last year, and you guys have always been fun playing this new style the coach plays, this chaos. But you guys this year had to find ways, to win different ways. You had to find ways to win in the half. It wasn't just that let's press for 4 quarters and see if we can create turnovers. How much does that style change and impact you guys for playing that fast style to saying, hey, now we got to slow it down and show we can win in the half court?
Yeah. So, that was a big change that we kind of found out early. We weren't able to press as we good as we were last year. So in practice, we're just practicing our half court offense, half court defense, slowing things down and just working all on that. And then, bring it to the game, you see how it went. And then it was good. It's very different from, the past 4 years where I'm just pressing and going and going and going the whole game. So it's different, but it was good.
And I was laughing too. I used to tell coach, I'm like, coach, I mean, how does he never get gassed? Like you guys would press, you'd be on the court for four quarters, and it's like back in the day, man, I'd be tapped out after like 3-4 minutes pressing. You just the conditioning that you're in, man, the great shape.
Yeah.
So as one of the leaders in this program and the leader in this program, when you look at time from you came on the varsity until obviously finishing up your senior season, how was your game changed?
Oh, I would say, it changed a lot. Even, starting on the defensive end, I feel like I play more defense, more like gritty, you know. But even on offense, just getting, like a dribble pull up, right hand finishes, you know, even the three. I wasn't really the greatest 3-point shooter, first couple of years. Then, I've improved that now.
And I always like to ask the young athletes this question, but who were some of the coaches and mentors that you've had, throughout your career?
We have guys like Danelius King, from Utica. That's kind of who started me, going to his camps back in the day at the JCC, every weekend from 8 to 3. So it's definitely one of those guys. And then, even on the varsity level, all the coaches really, Coach E, working with him, staying after practice, after many practices, just working with him, him getting me better, him pushing me.
So, Sarafa, now that your high school career comes to an end, any thoughts on what the plans are going to be moving forward? Are we going to see you playing basketball somewhere at the next level?
Yeah, I'm gonna be, obviously that's what I want to do. That's what I'm working on doing right now. Just figuring out, where I want to go and what I want to do.
And when we see you playing at that next level, and I can't wait to see where you're going to end up, and we'll definitely be following the career. What part of your game do you think you'll try to work on next to improve as you make that jump to the college level?
Definitely getting in the weight room. Guys in the college level, they're freshmen. They're really old, really strong, and so really just getting in that weight room. Just lifting weights. Every day getting bigger and bigger. I think that's going to be the big thing to do.
And if you could give advice to any of the next generation of young players coming up through the program, what would that advice be?
Honestly, stay connected with your teammates. This past year, I wasn't really as close with guys on the team, but to the end of the season, it's I'm gonna miss them. Just being with them every day, at practice and just being around them, having their company. It's nothing like it, and I enjoy it. And that's one thing I would say. Just stay with.
Rafe, I'll end with this and say, the community here in Rome loves their sports. They love following RFA sports in general. What did it mean to you to walk onto that court and see the stadium, the bleachers and everything? Because when I played, the bleachers were packed. We used to play at Stroud Gymnasium, and the
Yeah,
gym was packed. And it's
Yeah.
nice to see over the last so many years that the gym was packed. How much did it mean to you to have all the support from the community?
I mean a lot. You're coming down from the locker room, you walk in the gym, you just see everything. It's filled. Every time we see that, everybody on the team just hype. Just for a good atmosphere and a good time. Have a good game. But it means a lot. It's great, and I love it. And I thank everybody that comes out to the games and watches us.
Well, listen, man, you've been fun to watch play. It's been great to see you grow throughout your career at RFA, and I can't wait to see where you're going to play next. We'll be following you. Once you find out where you're going, we'll get you back on. We'll talk about it. But keep up the good work. Great
I
career, my
will.
man.
Thank you.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we got Scott on. I think he's on from the phone. So I can't keep him waiting. I can't keep you waiting anymore. What's
Uh,
going
I
on?
I apologize, Rock. I don't know. It just kept denying me on my computer, so I finally said, like, well, let me try with my phone now. So I'm here. I
Hey,
apologize.
it's all good. It's all good. I said I cannot go without getting you on here. We got to talk some SU here. So I just wrapped up with Serafia. What a great career he had here at RFA. One of the best point guards to come out of here. Just a great career. 1,000 point scorer. Played since he was at eighth grade. A good kid.
Yeah, no, I've been following from afar the progress, particularly in recent years of Room Free Academy basketball. It's been incredible to see the job they've done. I mean, they've really grown the program, as you well know, from the roots on up.
Yep.
I mean, you've had kids who've played with each other for 10 years or whatever, by their senior year of high school, and it's the way you build a program. You have to really start with the groundswell and the ground roots and build it up that way. So yeah, I'm very proud to see what's happened with that program.
So, Scott, we get to talk about what everybody's wondering who's going to be the next head coach at Syracuse. And I was just talking, you see so many names on
Yeah.
Twitter. You get on there, you don't know what's true, what's not true. But I want to get your thought first on the hiring of Brian Blair, the new AD. I know I was messaging you throughout the week. I didn't know too
Yeah.
much about him other than he's got strong NIL ties, fundraising. What do we know about him?
Well, I think that's the big thing. Like, the world has changed dramatically in what I now call the world of professional college sports. That's what it is. Let's be honest. This is where it is right now. It's about money, and that's a big part of it. And Syracuse has lagged behind, quite frankly, in terms of the NIL, name, image, likeness, these collectives. So I think that's his one of his big strong suits from everything I can gather. This Brian Blair, who was hired from the University of Toledo, where he did a marvelous job there. He built relationships, and he raised, I think it was 282% increase in NIL money at a MAC school, University of Toledo. So, that's going to be a huge part of his job of any athletic director now is your ability to connect with donors and to come up with creative, progressive ways to make money, so that you can fund these programs. It's the world has changed completely. You and I may not like it, but it's just the way it is. And if you want to compete in this world of professional college sports, you're going to have to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think he understands the magnitude, Rock, of this hire. Um, this is either the second, first or second biggest hire in the athletic program at Syracuse University. The first probably is football still, but given basketball and what a revenue producer it's been, through the years, leading the nation in attendance and so forth, he knows he has to get this right. It's been a floundering program. It began before Red Autry. The last several years of Jim Boeheim's tenure there,
Yeah.
which was mostly marvelous, but the last several years were not good. And so this has been a long process here of a decline in this program. And so they've got to get this hire right. It's essential that they get this one right. Find the right guy. And I talk about money. Well, one of the things that gets you money and gets donors excited to invest in your program is winning, and they haven't done enough of that. They haven't been in the this is the longest dry spell as far as NCAA tournament bids since Richard Nixon was the president of the United States. That's how long ago it was you'd have to go back to find a drought this long. So it's important, and we'll see. I think he's going to make a hire that, that's going to fulfill everything he's looking for in a coach, and that goes beyond just the X and O's these days.
Scott, what were your thoughts on Coach Boeheim? Made a couple of comments. He's been all over on TV at some of these conference championships. He came out and said that Red was basically fired because his two best players didn't play well.
Right.
This season, which not a bad take. I mean, they didn't play well. But
Right.
what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree. I mean, look at Donnie Freeman and J.J. Starling. When we got news last year that they were staying, I thought that was big news. I mean, here are two
Yeah,
veteran star players. Have them come back and kind of be the foundation of a team that was going to be an entirely new roster. Essentially, it seemed like with the not only with your freshman class coming in, but also with all the free agents, the recruits, that you sign through the portal. So I think that there's some validity to that take. Now, the other pushback is here. Well, what happened? J.J. Starling in particular, he disappeared rock down the stretch. I mean, he
yeah,
just literally disappeared. He had that one game, 0 points in 27 minutes.
yep,
And so, part of that's coaching. Like, yeah, players have to play, and ultimately they will decide, your wins and losses and stuff. But coaches have to coach too. And and believe me, I really like Adrian Autry as a person. I think he was a great player. He was a tough player. He go scrambling on the floor for loose balls and so forth, but he could never seem to instill that toughness in his players. And I think there was a stretch as you got toward the latter part of the season in particular. I think they just tuned out. I think they tuned him out, and he never seemed to settle on a solid rotation. And I also will, I think he's subject to criticism for a failure to make second half adjustments. How many times does Syracuse have the lead and looked pretty
yeah.
good against good teams, and then you come out after intermission and it's a totally different team. They didn't respond to the inevitable moves that a coach is going to make when things are not working. And so so yeah, I feel for him, but it wasn't working out. And he had 3 years, and I think this year in particular, they put together a team, and he had a big say in it, and they went out and spent some money. And I think this team underachieved. I really do.
Scott, and you hit a couple of key points I want to touch on. So obviously, I mean, a lot of people love Red. Great career, at Syracuse. And
Mhm.
what's this do to his reputation? I mean, obviously, you can see the pain in some of his interviews towards the end here, where he knew the writing was on the wall. And who knows? Many people said he knew probably three-quarters of the way through. He was out at the end of the season. That
Right.
could they go on one run like NC State did in the ACC tournament? But what do you think this does to his reputation?
Well, I think, I think it really hurts him in terms of getting another head coaching job. He was a trusted assistant, a good recruiter for Syracuse for a number of years before, he got the head coaching job there at his alma mater. So I think, he's obviously going to someplace as an assistant coach. Uh, and I think he will get that job. But the bigger question is like, do you give him another shot at being a head coach? That's going to be tougher. Certainly at this level, it's going to be tougher for him. So, I feel for him. I don't think it was for a lack of effort on his part, but it certainly was what he was selling. They weren't buying. His kids weren't buying. He tried to, and they really putting the total emphasis in the offseason workouts was on defense. We're going to press you. We're going to give you 40 minutes of hell. And it didn't work out. They were a very flawed offensive team, very inefficient offensive team. You can use any metric you want. Very poor outside shooting team. I think had one of the lowest assists per basket. ratios in college basketball. So, there's a lot to fault there. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. And I really feel for him because, you know, this was a dream job for him, obviously, at his alma mater. And hey, often don't work out for, you know, assistant coaches who have been promoted to the head spot.
So Scott, as Syracuse looks for that next head coach, I went through earlier and was started mentioning a few of those names, but I want to ask you the question first. What do you think are going to be some of the biggest challenges that the next coach is going to face?
Well, he's probably going to have to put together close to an entire new roster. That's why it's imperative that they get this thing settled well before April 7th, because that's the day everybody is eligible to go into the transfer portal and stuff. So I think you're going to have to, remake this entire roster. You're going to have to hire your general manager, who's going to play a role in this. Do you retain Kyan Anthony and Sadiq White? Your two, prominent, highly rated freshmen. That's not going to be easy. So I think that's going to be the big challenge right away, is you're going to have to get in there and really make a pitch of why things are going to be different. And I think the university, and this is going to fall upon the new chancellor, Mike Haney, and also on Brian Blair, the new athletic director. You got to have money. You
Yeah.
are like a middle of the road payer in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and that's just probably not going to do it. You're going to need to up your game and put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, if you want to compete. So that's going to be a big challenge. And again, depending who they hire. Obviously, if they hire Jerry McNamara, well, he's going to get the pressure now. Like, oh, geez, this was just an in the family hire, and we've seen it didn't work out with Red Autry, right? And that's not fair, but that's the way many critics are going to look at it. And beyond that, you're going to face the pressure, probably even greater than maybe Red Autry faced, is that your jersey's hanging in the rafters at this place. You took this team, you and Carmelo Anthony, to a national championship, so the expectations are going to be enormous. That shouldn't eliminate him. If you decide he is, in fact, after you do a thorough search, he is the best candidate, then you should hire him. If you really believe he gives you the greatest opportunity to succeed. But there's going to be some big challenges, and whoever comes in, if it's Brian Hodgson from South Florida, or one of the assistants at UConn or whatever, you're gonna come in with the expectation, like, you need to win now. You've got the onus of a 5-year NCAA tournament drought hanging over you. You've got the expectation levels of people thinking this is the way it was 10, 15 years ago, when it really isn't. So there's just a lot that you're going to have to deal with. But I think that said, Rock, I think it's a really, really great opportunity. I think you can succeed very, very well at Syracuse with the facilities. And if they're making that financial commitment, which I believe they're going to make, realizing we got to up our game.
Feel bad though. I was saying it earlier. I said, you know what? I feel like coaches get fired, and then you hear the university say, "Well, we're going to invest in the money. We're going to up it a little bit." And it's like, why didn't you do it when the current coach was there? But I get it. College landscape has changed. So
Right.
keep on Jerry McNamara. Everybody has said there's a lot of people here locally that would love to see him come home, and then there's some people that are saying, well, because Red got fired, that kind of hurts GMAC's chances to come back, and we don't even know if Jerry McNamara wants to come back to
Mhm.
Syracuse. Some people have said he's had some calls from, I think, Georgia Tech and some ACC schools. Boston College is open.
Boston
What's
College.
your
Yep.
thoughts, and what would you share to the people that say that it hurts his chances with Red being fired?
Well, I do think it does, and I think he's gonna, and again, it's unfair, but it's the reality. He gets the job, but they're just gonna say, well, this is more of the same. You're just keeping it in house. You're keeping it in the family, and sometimes when you keep it in the family, it doesn't work out. There's been a number of cases where it hasn't. So, um, but I do think that Jerry wants the job. I mean, he's not going to say that right now because He's got a team going to the NCAA
Yeah.
tournament. He owes it to them, and that's just not. He's smart enough to realize that's not the right thing to do. He's got as he said, he goes, "I got a job to finish here." Now, whether that's whatever, however long it takes him in the NCAA tournament, or whatever, does it mean years from now? I don't think if Syracuse wants him, this is happening. Um, and and I think Jerry's smart enough to know that, what he's walking into. But let's give him credit too. He left the program. He inherited a program that was what, 4-22 or even worse.
Yep.
And 2 years later, he's in the NCAA tournament. That's pretty good. Those are pretty good credentials right there. And that's not Syracuse related credentials. So he did go out, and now it's not a long body of work. Was it a flukish year? I don't know. He did it in increments, it seemed. And so but again, this is a huge hire. Brian Blair has to get this right. This is his reputation as a young, up and coming, athletic director. He's got to get it right. The chancellor's got to get it right. Um, it's a huge and important hire for the university.
Scott, when I watched the Siena game the other night when they won the MAC championship game, and you see how hard his players play, and when
Right.
you talk about how Red played when he was at Syracuse, and you watch that Siena team, it's like they play like GMAC played when he was at Syracuse. It's like those kids would run through an absolute wall for
Right.
Jerry McNamara. I think that's what Syracuse needs.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's what Red wanted, but could never, get this group to buy into. As like if you're going to play, the Arkansas 40 minutes of hell type game, or the type of game that St. John's plays, where you're attacking constantly. You're forcing the issue constantly. It takes a lot of effort, takes some depth, but it takes a total buy-in. You can't sleep on defense. I might sleep here and there and a little bit on offense or whatever, or catch my breath, this and that. You can't do it if you're playing man and you're attacking.
Yep.
I mean, you start getting lazy there, and it's easy buckets, and we saw that happen, this year with this Syracuse team. So yeah, I think I love that. I always measure. That's one of the measurements I have for a coach. Like, how hard are your players playing for you? Effort. Uh, I think that is a sign of good coaching. Now, again, it's a small sample size that we've seen in Siena, but that's a good sign. So again, I said initially when they were hiring Boeheim's replacement, I knew it was going to be a foregone conclusion. He was going to be given the opportunity to name his successor, just as Krzyzewski did at Duke,
Yep.
and Williams did it in North Carolina and stuff. But I said it's open it up into a national search, and you may be surprised or whatever. But that wasn't going to happen. But now it is going to happen. It's got to happen this time. And again, you got to remove sentimentality. And if you believe that, Hodgson or Luke Murray, the assistant at UConn, or somebody else is the guy, sorry, I got to do what's best for Syracuse University. And that isn't necessarily bringing home the prodigal son to do this. But maybe it will work out this time. I always say, regardless who it is, connections to Syracuse or not, in this case, it's always better to be the guy following the guy who follows the legend. It's
Absolutely.
never easy to follow the legend, whether it's John Wooden, and what they did in UCLA or any place. I mean, North Carolina went through the same thing with Dean Smith and struggled for a number of years where they were not a great program again, and it took them a while to get back there. So we'll see. But they had and Brian Blair has no connection to Syracuse, so that might be a positive in that he's going to look at this with objective eyes.
Scott, two names that I heard. Obviously, you mentioned Brian Hodgson, the coach from South Florida, who, again, I didn't really know anything about this guy
Right.
until Florida wins 20 something games, and they're close today if they punch their ticket, to
Yeah.
the NCAA tournament. He's won everywhere he's been, Mike Hopkins' name, comes up, and they said Mike Hopkins is interested. Now we know a couple good years at Washington, his career didn't end the way he probably wanted it to. He's in the NBA. One interesting name I heard, and I think Dickie V might have said this, and I thought about this. He mentioned Bobby Hurley would
Yeah,
be a name as a
yeah.
replacement. What's your thoughts on first? Let's start with the Hopkins. What's your thoughts on Coach Hopkins?
Well, I think that ship sailed. I really do. He was the head coach in waiting forever, and they even had a succession plan in place, an official
Yep.
one that they made an announcement with. The
Yep.
the, the chancellor and everybody, and Beheim was in, and then all of a sudden, you saw like, oh, that's just like to let things cool off after the last time they were on probation, and then when they
Mm-hmm.
cooled off or whatever, like, I changed my mind. And so I thought that was unfair to Mike Hopkins to do it that way. I don't think it was handled really well. You come out publicly and say, this is our succession plan. Jim's going to retire after such and such a season, and then Mike Hopkins is going to replace him. Fine. All right, you got your succession plan, whatever. Great. And then you reneged on it, but I think it's, Mike's, I forget what he's probably late 50s now, 56,
Yeah.
57 or what. I just think that, and as you mentioned, I mean, he had two really good years, his first 2 years at Washington. The last five were not good.
Right.
And all of a sudden, like his recruiting, golden touch didn't work anymore. So I would be surprised if they go that route. Um, you know, um, and then as far as Hurley is concerned, things didn't go swimmingly necessarily at where he was at Arizona State, right? I mean, he was there for a while, and he had
Yep.
resources there. It's not like that's not a university, I mean, that doesn't have resources. It's a huge state university and with a rich tradition in athletics and stuff. So I don't know if I'm really sold on that one. You know. He had some success in some other places, but I don't know. I'm not real keen on that one. I know it'll come up, and you can certainly interview him, and but you're going to have to ask some hard questions like, what happened there? Why didn't it work out there when you had a lot of things really going in your favor?
Scott, some people are saying, do you pick the phone up and call some of the big names, the Bruce Pearls that have been out of it now, or who just retired? Are there any
Right.
big names you think Syracuse at least picks up the phone and calls?
I don't know.
Rick
I
Pitino, can we get Pitino out of St. John's
yeah,
to come to
yeah.
Syracuse?
Yeah, I think Patino is a great coach. I don't, there's a lot of questions about his character and
Yeah.
certain things that had happened in his past or whatever. But I mean, I will give him his due. Like we talked about playing hard for your coach, and his kids always play hard. And he's obviously he's had success every place he's been, except you know some a little bit in the NBA didn't work out. But uh, I don't know. I would prefer. I'd prefer to go with a younger coach. And you could talk about the Colgate coach, right? Um,
Yep, Matt Leinart.
uh, yeah, but things haven't gone real well for him the last couple of years. Now he did have success before that. And there was a time when I thought, wow, what could he do? But I'm thinking that ship also has left harbor. So I don't know. I think I'd rather go with somebody who has taken a situation like either McNamara or Hodgson has, and they've turned it around fairly quickly. Because I think the pressure is going to be, just like the Buffalo Bills, it's Super Bowl or bust, regardless of what you say with a new coach this year. It's Super Bowl or bust. I think the expectations
Yep.
are here at Syracuse, at the very least, it's tournament, bid or bust, because it's been too long, and the fans have voted by not coming to games again. And that money talks. Like their attendance was way down. It's still better than all but what 4 or 5 schools in the country, but still they need to fill those seats again. So I would prefer, I would rather go with a younger uh, coach who's had some head coaching experience. I mean, the two assistants there at UConn, who have been a huge part of Dan Hurley's success there,
Yeah.
with the Huskies, are up there. But I think you're going to really have to spend some big time money to get what Luke Murray and who's the other guy I'm drawing a blank on, Kamani Young. They're two
Yeah.
they've played huge roles in the recruitment, and Young might be a guy who's maybe ready to go right now. Murray, I mean, unless you've got like some really great offer, he's in a great situation. It's like sometimes you're better off just staying there and being the number two guy and continue to win national championships or whatever and get paid a nice chunk of change. Um, so yeah, I just I would probably not want to, dig deep into, retread coaches right now or whatever. I'd rather get some young dynamic guy who can. I really think the program needs an infusion of new blood, like energy that's been lacking here for the last 5, probably longer than that, years.
Well, many think it's a two coach race between GMAC and Hodgins, the South Florida coach. So we'll see if Brian Blair's got somebody outside the box that nobody's thinking about, which wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
If he does. So when do we think we'll hear an announcement? Do you think we'll hear something before the tournament starts next weekend
No,
or
no,
after the
because
tournament?
yeah, I think about it in a case. Hodgson, as you said, he's got a chance to win a championship and get an automatic bid today. They play South Florida,
Yep.
and McNamara, they haven't played their first tournament game. We know they're guaranteed to go to the tournament. We'll find out how long of a run, if they make any sort of Cinderella run, that probably enhances him. So I think, they're gonna wait and see where these guys go in terms of the tournament. But I think shortly after that, if they're the two leading candidates, and Brian Blair has already said he's full, and he dove into the pool already. He's been working really hard, um, at this with the committee and working with Wild Hacks. But this is going to, he says he and Wildhack will make the current athletic director at Syracuse, John Wildhack. They said he and Wildhack will make this decision in concert. But if it's Brian Blair's hire, since his reputation and his future there at
Yeah.
Syracuse is going to be tied to this hire. He should make it. He should have the right. And I think you're right. I would not be shocked um, if we get like some name out of the blue that we haven't even been thinking about, but Brian
Right.
Blair thinks he fits what I need, checks all these boxes I need for a coach in 2026, with the landscape totally changed and knowing the situation I'm walking into here at Syracuse and trying to revive an athletic program and a basketball program in particular. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I think I will say this: they will have somebody. I would think somebody will be hired within. I want to say within the next 2 weeks, and that's warp speed they're going at, but they have no choice.
Yeah.
And again, I think you need to get somebody in there well before, um, well before that April 7th transfer portal
Yeah.
official opening, because you've got to identify who you want to keep, you know, and the new coach also, when he's being interviewed, is going to, I'm going to be asking him as an athletic director, who do you suggest as a general manager? Because the general manager's position in college basketball and college football is hugely important
Huge.
now.
Yep.
And some will say that, the guy who's the GM, and his name's escaping me now, for Syracuse, may have let, Red Autry down. Although let's not kid ourselves. Like, the coach does have final say on what kids he's recruiting or
Yeah.
bringing in through the transfer portal and stuff. So those are Red's kids. Like, he thought he had the right players, and obviously it didn't work out that way.
So, Scott, last thing, not a Syracuse related question here. Before we even see brackets released tonight, a lot of good teams. Duke's playing well. Michigan's playing well. Who do you like so far without seeing a bracket?
It's tough. If Duke didn't have the kind of the uncertainty a little bit with the injured point guard and the injured big guy, I would be all over them. So that's an uncertainty. I mean, they did show a lot of moxie in winning that game with a backup point guard and without your starting big guy. But they're so talented too, like they're Duke.
Yep.
So I still kind of like them. I would, if I'm looking for a sleeper, um, boy, I like Houston. Like they're a tough team. They may not they may not be as talented as last year's team, but they always play hard. They always play hard, and
Yep.
they're kind of a sleeper pick. Arizona. I don't know. The rap on them is that they have a lot of talent, but they've never gotten past that hump. They don't go deep
Yep.
into a tournament, but maybe this is the year, right? So it's I think there's probably 6 7 teams. I didn't mention Michigan or some of the others that are certainly you've got to look at and so we'll in Florida we'll see how it plays out, but I'm kind of I still kind of like Duke, but if those injuries are ones where these guys are not getting back, particularly the point guard. Uh, boy, I don't know how you do it without a point guard win a national championship. It's really, really, really almost impossible. So, who do you like?
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, you know what? I'm a big Arizona not team fan, but I like Tommy Lloyd, who's a
Hmm.
former Gonzaga assistant under Mark Few. But I'm with
Right,
you. They just can't seem to go make a deep run in a tournament. All the talent in the world. I think right now it's going to be your one seeds, and I'm a guy who doesn't like chalk, but Michigan's playing as good as anybody right now. Houston's right there. The not Calvin Sampson just can't get that national championship. He gets there. His kids
right,
play so hard. They rebound the basketball.
yeah.
Duke, like you said, I think you're going to see a lot of favorites come through this thing before we see some of the brackets, but we'll see.
Yeah. And I don't know, like that's been something to, another thing I don't like about, the new world of college sports that we're in. We worry about will there be Cinderella teams,
Yeah.
down the road that have been such a appealing thing about March Madness. We love that. We love the underdog, it's part of the American way. We root for the underdog, and I think as you rely more and more on who has the resources, money, to bring in the talent, um, I don't know if we're gonna see that as much down the road, and that would be a shame and another another thing that's damaging about where we're going with college sports right now.
Well, Scott, listen, I'm glad we were able to get you on here this morning. We got it worked out. You came in loud and clear, and always great to connect. It's been a while. We talked during football season, but I'm glad we were able to make this happen. I always appreciate you coming out. It means the world to have you on.
Well, I appreciate it too, and I apologize profusely. I'm technologically challenged. My laptop wouldn't do it. I should have just went to the phone right away, and I decided to give it a shot on the phone, and the phone let me through. So it's always great being with you, my friend.
All right, Scott, keep in touch. I'll be reaching out.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. So that was Scott Pitoniak, who's Rome Sports Hall of Famer, award-winning journalist. Scott always comes on with me. He's been one of my first guys that I've had on this show probably for the last 10 years, and there's nobody better. Not only just to talk Syracuse football and basketball. Scott can talk Bill. Scott can talk just about anything, and has been so good to me and my family. So I want to make sure that I thank Scott for always jumping on with me here this morning. So that's good to do it for this week's edition of the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch. Again, I want to thank Scott for jumping on with me to talk everything Syracuse basketball. We'll see who the Orange name is the successor to Coach Autry here in just a few weeks. And also thank you to Rome Free Academy standout Serafia Norris, who was the Tri-Valley League Player of the Year here in the Mohawk Valley. Thank him for jumping on with me as well. I appreciate both of them in their time here this morning. As always, thank you to everyone listening this morning and supporting local sports here in the Mohawk Valley. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch all the full episodes on all across my social media channels. And again, I'm Coach Little C, reminding you to support your local athletes, support your local teams, and continue celebrating the great sports community we have here in the Mohawk Valley. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next Sunday right here on the Mohawk Valley Sportswatch.